My dad built a lot of kitchen chairs like this, and for the back he cut that curved piece just out of a much thicker piece of wood to get that curvature, but I don't have anything that thick. So I want to bend the wood, and I tried this by taking a piece of wood and screwing it to this bending form, got it warm, then tightened down the screws and baked it some more, and it took that shape almost perfectly.
So I'm making a bending form to use with the actual workpieces. And cutting the workpieces down to a thickness. I have to do this in stages because my saw's not powerful enough. I'm only bending that workpiece a little bit while it's still cold. And 10 minutes later, with the workpieces nice and hot, it's time to tighten it down a bit. And then I gave it another 5 minutes in the oven before tightening everything all the way down. And after that, I gave it another 20 minutes in the oven.
So that thermometer is showing just past 0. That's because it's gone all the way around, so it's well past the boiling point of water. So these 3 pieces came out very consistent, but slightly less curvature than I had in my CAD model. So for the second batch, I put a shim in there. A little more curved. And pretty close to what I was planning on getting. But I want a tenon on the end that's going to be not at an angle. And that means much of that is not going to be inside the workpiece, so I need to make a wedge to add on here.
And here's making a tenon template for the pantorouter.
So now I need to cut tenons on the ends of this, and this is where the pantorouter is great. I extended the table just a little bit so I have the support at the same level. Got a template made, and hopefully I have everything set up right.
And this is where things start to go less well than expected.
I'm not sure if you saw this in the video, but this workpiece was starting to slide this way a bit, and that's because I have it clamped on the level here, but it's supported on a slope, so vibrations drove it forward. So now I put a clamp on the back that pushes up against here, so hopefully it can't wander forward.
Except the way I put that clamp on the back on the wedge-shaped piece, I ended up pulling it back a bit, and I only realized that as I was starting to route the tenon. So then I made sure the workpiece was up against the router bit and started the router. Oops.
And this is how it'll connect to the chair back rails. I cut this tenon. Now for the tenon on the other end, I need to make sure that the distance from shoulder to the other shoulder is exactly right. This distance to the bit is exactly what I need, and with a block clamp to the bottom, I can now hook it on there, and that way I know it's not going to slide on me. And I can't clamp the workpiece too hard, otherwise it'll flatten a bit, and that screws up the accuracy. And sometimes the router pushes it to the side a bit, so I've got this piece to make sure it can't slide this way, and on the other side I've got the fence, so nothing will move.
Now watch that clamp handle. Without a whole lot of pressure on that clamp, the vibrations are enough to loosen it. So then I added a block underneath the arch of the piece of wood so I could tighten it down hard enough without flattening it. And by the time I got to the final workpiece, I had my procedure all worked out. So first putting the workpiece in against the bit of the router, put the block underneath it, tighten it down real good, then adding clamps to the back of it to keep it from sliding forward from vibrations. And finally making sure the side stop is tight against the workpiece and tighten down and tighten the clamp a bit more. And I start by routing the bottom of the tenon because the workpiece can still move forward a little bit while I do that, and that matters a lot less when routing the bottom than the top. After that, I flipped the workpiece around and clamped a block to the tenon that I just cut, and then hooked that over the end of the extended table, and then cut the other tenon.
So lining these up now. This one's a wee bit longer than the other ones. Unfortunately, I can't just put this one back on the pantorouter and cut it a bit shorter because the support is at an angle, and that would make the tenon a little bit thinner.
I'm cutting out my 1-to-1 template that I printed on some cardstock using my Big Print program. Smoothing your transition to that wedge requires a bit of digging with the sanders. Fortunately, all the dust goes straight in the dust port right next to that drum. I added this nose to my router fence so I could guide the workpiece vertically against the 1/4" roundover bit on the router, but it's still pretty tricky to follow that compound curve of the back rung.
There, 6 chair back rungs made. Now I'm just going to make the rest of the chairs, and I think that will be a little bit more straightforward, but more work than making these things.